These days I'm going to remember to turn that thing on. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Parish in Hingham, also known as Old Ship Church. I'm Clayton Handelman, a member of our Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he and him. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather here as an open community that honors freedom of belief, encourages spiritual growth in ourselves and our children, and shares the wisdom of the many religious traditions with reverence for the earth and in service to humanity. We gather here on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts peoples, the original nation of this land, and we are mindful that for Massachusetts peoples of every generation, this land is sacred. If you are visiting or newly attending our services, we would like to extend a warm welcome to you and invite you and everyone else to gather for coffee and conversation at 14 Main Street after the service. Special welcome to Dylan and Catherine, who are joining us today, and Barbara Gay, who is an ancestor of Ebenezer Gay, our first minister. Thank you. 14 Main Street is, you just go down to the sidewalk, hang a right, go to the corner at where Brood Awakening is, hang another right, and we're in the first door in that building, and you'll see other people going in. Please note in your order of service this week's schedule of events here at Old Ship. If you have any questions, stop by our welcome table at coffee hour. And also any member of our board would be happy to answer your questions. And you can identify us with, we have these name tags that have the pink around the border. We're happy you are with us today, and we welcome you to bring all that you are to this congregation, your beliefs and your traditions, your identity, your story, and the wisdom of your years. You are welcome here. If you are looking for inspiration, comfort, or connection, we hope that you will find it here. Our morning service will now begin.
I invite you to, good morning. Happy Mother's Day. I'm Edmund Robinson. My pronouns are he, him, and I have the privilege to serve as minister of this wonderful old church. And I want to invite you to turn to 573 in the back of your gray hymnal for the Mother's Day proclamation of Julia Ward Howe. Now, this is not the thing that set up Mother's Day as the national holiday, but this was something that Julia Ward Howe felt strongly about right after the Civil War, trying to get together the women who had lost men in both sides of that conflict. So if you want to read the italicized text, I'll read the other. 573, I'm sorry. 573. I'm also talking through allergies, so I'll try to talk slowly. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of fears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, Let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, and each bearing after her own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God.
My name is Karen Churchill. My pronouns are she, her. I light the candle today for the complexity of motherhood. On Mother's Day, let us mark how beautiful and complex it can be to be a mother and to be mothered. To those who have mothered, we thank you. To those who rejoice in the work, the role, the presence of mothering and mothers, we celebrate you. To those who are in the thick of parenting children of any age, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through infertility, abortion, miscarriage, adoption, or running away, we mourn you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve you. To those who have endured abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge you. To those who experience pain at the marking of this day, we witness you. To those who are single moms, grandmoms, stepmoms, foster moms, adoptive moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. May we reflect with gratitude on the wide spectrum of mothering that happens in our lives and in our communities.
Our opening hymn, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, number 8.
Father Spirit, shared is a joy doubled, and the sorrow shared is a sorrow halved. Please stand and share your joys and sorrows with us this morning. Lorraine.
Sorry.
Derek.
Hello, my name is Lorraine Barney Riggs, and I want to light a candle today for a Hull hero, a Hull legend, and a neighbor of mine who died yesterday, Charlie Gould. And while you're at it, put another one of those candles up there for Julia Ward Howe, our ancestor who preceded all the other Mother's Day things with a Mother's March for Peace, which is still going on in Dorchester.
Aren't I lucky? I was asked to pass the microphone around and I get to light a candle. No more wars. Sorry, I sound like a worn out record that keeps playing in the same grooves, but there's just too much hatred, vindication, and everything else vindicative. Sorry. I'll get it right in a minute. And I'm going to say what I always say, and that is a prayer for the Uyghurs in the Western China. There happen to be Muslims next to Tajikistan. The Tibetans who have lost their territory in the past. The Rohingya who are now forced to be in Bangladesh and India. And of course, the Palestinians in their occupied land and the Ukrainians that look like they're losing a lot of theirs. That's it.
Are there any on Zoom? Nothing on Zoom. Thank you.
A candle for a very nice day outside.
I had one candle at my office.
Oh, we have one in the...
Oh, one over there, okay. I want to light a candle for the student movement that is bursting forth, much as it did in the 1960s, to question war and to come together, not to force anyone's opinion on anyone else, but to exchange opinions. There was a great podcast that I listen to every week, Chris Lydon's Radio Open Source, and it had faculty members from a West Coast school and an East Coast school about how much civilized discourse there was on this very fraught issue of Palestinian justice before the police simply arrived and shut it down. So I want to commend all of those students and faculty that are coming together to try to talk through this dark time.
Oh, good catch. I want a candle of concern. Ellie's not here today because she was started feeling under the weather last night. She seems to be feeling better today. And a candle of celebration for all the mothers who work so hard, often are taken for granted, and are so deeply committed to raising our children and giving them love nonstop without reservation. As an absent-minded father who keeps just looking and being reminded by my wife, who never ever wavers for a moment. If there's, it's almost as if in the middle of the night, if something goes wrong with our son who's halfway across the country, she knows. So that depth of love and focus is wonderful to see, and thank you, all you moms out there.
We hold in our hearts all the joys and sorrows that have been left unexpressed in words this morning.
Now I invite you to enter into a time of silent meditation, and I will wrap it up with a prayer. Mother Nature's Prayer by Ursula Goodenough. Our Mother, who art within us, hallowed be thy name. Thy ways evolve, thy will calls forth this earth that is now our heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and fill us with tenderness as we repair our trespasses, and lead us not into destruction, but deliver us into harmony. For thine is our source and our substrate and our glory forever and ever. Amen.
The Lanyard by Billy Collins. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly. A past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until it made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim, and I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are 1,000 meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor at Brown Ledge Camp. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here I wish to say to her now is a smaller gift, not the worn truth, that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard, or maybe it was something made out of pipe cleaners, Mom, I'm not sure. I was as sure as any boy, or whatever, could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Thank you, Mom.
And thank you, Jen. And let's have our offering now.
Oh
Love one a mother. I want to start by inviting you to sit comfortably in your seats and close your eyes and try to re-experience a time we know we experienced, even though we can't remember it. The liquid warmth of the womb, the darkness, the comfortable sloshing back and forth as our mother went through her normal daily motions. Can we feel the absolute security of this place? Can we hear the sounds, mother's heartbeat, just a few inches from our ears from the time that ears were forming, steady, reassuring, the first rhythm and the basis for all life's rhythms that came after. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And then one day, the world turned upside down and our home was convulsed with great shaking and squeezing, and our little heads were compressed, and we were stuck in a very tight place for a very long time. And just when it seemed that we weren't going to make it, suddenly we opened our eyes and there was light and air for the first time and noise other than the heartbeat. We were terrified. And we sucked that air in to let out the biggest scream we could. Go ahead, cry. It seems the only appropriate response to this trauma we had just suffered, the greatest most of us would ever suffer. And the only thing that would comfort us in those first few minutes on the outside was to spend time clinging to the person we had just been inside of, feeling her warmth and softness, and hearing that reassuring heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And our mother responded to this. She pretty much had to. As soon as the birth was complete, a powerful hormone called oxytocin started coursing through her veins. And it's like love potion number 9. She falls in love with her baby. And by coincidence, her baby needs her to fall in love because human babies are helpless for a long period of time after birth, longer than any other animal. So evolution has taken care of this problem and given us a chemical-based mother love. This is the setup that nature provides. We honor our mothers today because it is in the nature of things that we start life with an intimacy with them, more total and more physical than we ever have again with another human being. You may live with a spouse or lover for 60 years. You will never get as physically close to him or her as you get to your mother in the first 9 months. This intimacy is the point at which I want to start today. But I don't want to get all Hallmark card sentimental. The topic of motherhood here in the 21st century is not all apple pie. First and most obviously, not all of us have been or will be mothers. Some of us, like myself, are disqualified by our plumbing, and others of us will have simply taken other directions in life. I want to honor non-motherhood as a noble path, and to acknowledge that women who have not had children sometimes feel very out in the cold in a discussion of mothers. Second, every one of us has had some degree of conflict with our real mothers, either in childhood, adolescence, or as an adult. And some of us hold permanent scars from this. It will not do to simply lift up the cheery aspects of motherhood without mentioning the shadow side. There is so much sentimental blather in the air at this time of year that we may suspect that Mother's Day is a conspiracy of the greeting card companies, the florists, the chocolatiers, the restaurants, and the public radio stations. We forget that it was a Unitarian activist in the 19th century, Julia Ward Howe, that started this observance, a day when women were supposed to rise up and put an end to war. Of course, she didn't exactly put an end to war. Maybe what has come to an end is the idea that women are inherently more peaceful. But what I want to focus on today is the theology of motherhood. When we are in the womb, our mothers are our total environment. We started as part of her body. In those early weeks, there was no me and her. It was all her. Even after birth, we did not differentiate ourselves from the rest of the world until we learned to recognize our mother's face. Our mothers then are, in a sense, the ground of our being. There are many things we choose in life, so many things that we sometimes forget that the biggest things are things we didn't choose, but were chosen for us. To be born at all, and to be born to this particular set of parents in this particular time, is just a given, not a choice. Now, what does this have to do with theology? Just this. I think our culture tries to push our mothers to personify a symbol for the larger force or entity to which we owe our existence, from which we sprung. The source of our very existence, or as Tillich called it, the ground of our being. Some will choose to call this ground of being God. Some will call it spirit. Some may call it fate or karma. Some will call it the world. And for many of us, it will be unnamed. The essential point is that there is something other and larger than ourselves, something prior to our own existences, something we did not choose, but which in some sense chose us. We often go around ignoring this larger context. Buddhists are fond of using the metaphor of fish. The fish do not see the water, for they are so embedded in it. We do not see the larger medium in which we live and move and have our being. But it is to us like our mother once was. She was everything, and she was so pervasive that we grew up largely in ignorance of how much we owe her. And in this vision of motherhood is unconditional love. I don't want to just use mothers as a symbol of divinity. I want to use oxytocin to stand for divine love, the love that binds us to one another, or as I say in the title, love one a mother. What was Jesus' distillation of all the law and the prophets? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. With oxytocin, a mother can't help loving her baby as herself. Oxytocin, by the way, is not the sole property of females. It is found in the blood of male birds when they are sitting on a nest. It is the chemical expression of the nurturing instinct. In the poem Jennifer read earlier, Billy Collins says, "She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim, and I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals," she said, "and here's clothing and a good education. And here's your lanyard," I replied, "which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here's a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world," she whispered. "And here," I said, "is the lanyard I made at camp." I think religious liberals tend to get stuck in the lanyard mentality. We don't know what to call that which gave us our being, that from which we are derived. We don't, by and large, give any weight to the stories in the Bible, and we believe in the insights of modern science. And somehow, we let that be a substitute for thanksgiving. This congregation defines itself as humanists. And if humanism means that we believe in putting humans first, I'm there too. But if our intellectual agnosticism or atheism is an excuse to live life in ignorance of our debt to things and forces outside ourselves that have bestowed, are bestowing, and will continue to bestow blessings on us, we are living in spiritual poverty. Not only that, we're living in delusion if we think that all this came about through our own actions. Many of you in this congregation are fond of the Wendell Berry poem, which says, "The love and work of friends and lovers belong to the task and are its health. Rest and rejoicing belong to the task and are its grace. Let tomorrow come tomorrow. Not by your will is the house carried through the night." As I have been pointing out in my Amplifying the Charge sermons, through much of the 20th century, many Unitarian churches used an affirmation written by James Freeman Clarke in 1886 as 5 points of Unitarian faith: the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and the continuity of human development in all worlds, or the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. Let me focus on this first idea, the fatherhood of God. That is not particularly remarkable in the light of Christian theology. For God the Father is the first person of the Trinity. Jesus himself refers to God as his Father and the Father of all humanity. Orthodox Christian theology holds that Jesus was divine. In his divine aspect, he is referred to as the Logos. Logos means word, reason, or plan. The Logos, one part of the Trinity, becomes incarnate in the human Jesus. The word incarnated means to be made flesh. In the Gospel of John, it says the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Now, the idea of a God being made flesh does not begin with the Christians. Ancient religions are full of tales of immortals interacting and inbreeding with humans. You may know the Greek myth of Leda, who was raped by the god Zeus in the form of a swan and produced 2 immortal children, Helen and Polydeuces. In the case of Jesus, the immortal agent does not rape Mary, but immaculately impregnates her. And in traditional thinking, the agent doing the impregnating is not God the Father, but the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity. Mary is fully human, but in Catholic thought takes on some aspects of a divine mother. The meaning of divine fatherhood was further fleshed out by the Council of Nicaea in 325. The question they set out to answer was, is the Logos, the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God the Father, or was he made by God the Father, who after all made everything else? The answer was that he was the Son, or as the Nicene Creed says it, begotten, not made. This is an important distinction. One makes the sculpture, a painting or poem. One builds a building or lays out a road or farm, but one begets a child. And I think the distinction is more profound if we flip the sex roles and talk about mothering instead of fathering. We all make things. We make lanyards. We make pies. We make money. We make a career. We make a scene, but we don't make a person. Some of us bear a person. Some of us birth a person. Some of us raise a person. This is why the lanyard is so pathetic in the poem. What is a few twisted strands of plastic braid against the gift of life itself? The poet does a wonderful job of painting this comically for us. But to get back to theology, where I think Orthodox Christianity went off the rails was not in saying that Jesus was God, but in saying that the rest of us were not. The Gospel of Thomas strongly hints what Emerson intuited a century before its discovery, that Jesus preached that all of us had a divine light in us. We're all children of a divine Father. or as I would like to say today, a divine mother. Emerson said that the great perversion of the spirit was, quote, that the divine nature is attributed to one or two persons and denied to all the rest, and denied with fury. That's from his divinity school address. If we are all children of a divine mother, that makes us all sisters and brothers. So the second article of Clarke's Unitarian affirmation of faith proceeds from the first. Now, clearly, this language is inadequate. It's suffused with patriarchy. Since it was originally expressed in male terms, okay, it was patriarchal. Does that mean it cannot be translated? I'd like to think that the concept is not so infected with the oppressive attitudes of the time in which it was written that some nugget of truth may not be mined from it to help us in our lives today. Think about the idea of universal siblinghood. I have preached on love and Darwinism. Darwinian evolution, as it used to be understood, would give us all the tendency to protect our own kin, anyone who might be carrying our genes or those of a close relative. If the overall idea is to propagate your own lineage, we should be protective of our tribe and killing off all the others. But today's evolutionary scientists are very impressed by the fact that we have such keenly attuned social skills, that we have the ability to read each other's minds to some extent. After all, since humans are capable of killing one another, the biggest threat to any individual's existence is not larger or fiercer animals, but other humans. Thus, it's a handy thing for survival to have the ability to walk into a group of people and read the body language, facial expression, and smell, and determine with some accuracy whether you're going to be welcomed into this group or killed. Eventually, these social skills evolved into religions, which taught the value of love and extended the circle of kinship out to all humans. I've sung this African American Christmas carol before. I think it expresses this universalist idea nicely. If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am. If anybody asks you who I am, tell them I'm a child of God. In the near future, we will welcome a few new members into this church. And as we do, we will remind ourselves that our church is built on covenant. Covenant is the glue that holds together a church, which is not based on a shared theological belief. It is the sum of all reasons why we come together. And as such, it can't be expressed in any finite set of words. But the religious meaning of the term covenant is informed by its history in the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible is basically the story of the covenant between God and God's chosen people, the Israelites. In the Torah, there are several covenants that God makes, one with Noah, 3 with Abraham, and 1 with Moses. Now, there's an interesting thing about the text which expresses one of the covenants with Abram. Abram was before he became Abraham. It occurs in the story of the first of these covenants in Genesis 19, when God, in the form of 3 strangers, visit Abram and his wife Sarai. Sarai is barren. She becomes Sarah later on. Sarah is barren and is in her 90s, and yet God promises that she shall bear a son, and out of that son shall come a great nation. Sarai, in other words, will be a super mother. She falls down laughing, which is why the son she has then is named Isaac, which means laughter. But what is remarkable is the word used for God. In most of Genesis, God is designated as by JHVH, Yahweh, or Elohim. In this passage, the term El Shaddai is used, and it is used only a few more times in the Hebrew Bible. El is the Semitic word for God, and Elohim is the more usual term for God. Shaddai literally means mountains, so El Shaddai would mean God of the mountains. But some commentators have noted that the term Shaddai is similar to the Hebrew Shaddayim, which is breasts. and thus read El Shaddai as God of the breasts, or in other words, a mother figure. This reading is disputed by others. Personally, I like the idea of a maternal God, giving the covenant on which the Jewish people is founded. One commentator says that while the breast etymology is weak, the name El Shaddai does imply that God is all sufficient, as mother's milk is all sufficient for the newborn child. The point I'm trying to make is that covenant in its oldest religious meanings has overtones of maternal nurturance. The original glue that bound the children of Abraham was given by God, El Shaddai. Of course, in this church, we no longer conceive of covenant as between God and humans, but as between humans and humans in the institution of the church. But we can hold each other in unconditional love as a mother holds a child. We can find some spiritual oxytocin. Let me try to bring these disparate strands to some sort of conclusion. A year ago, I came across some letters my father wrote my mother when he was stationed in Italy in World War II. They had gotten married a year before the war broke out, and my oldest brother had been born just before my dad shipped out for North Africa. My father had to pull some strings to get a short leave so he could come see his son at least once before going off to war. In the letters, my dad referred repeatedly to my mother as Hudi, H-U-D-I. I remembered from my early childhood that both of them used this term of endearment for the other. In one letter, Dad assured Mother of his continuing love for her, that all he wanted was to stay alive long enough to see his Hudi again. I was fascinated and a bit embarrassed to be eavesdropping on such intimate correspondence. Of course, they wanted to keep the marriage alive, and I'm glad they did, for I was born 3 years after the war ended. But where did the term come from? I knew that this term had something to do with the famous violinist Yehudi Menuhin, but I didn't know exactly how. But Wikipedia to the rescue. If Wikipedia is right, Menuhin was born in 1916, the same year as my father, to a pair of Jewish refugees who had come to New York from Lithuania. A few years earlier, as the parents looked for a place to live, they were shown an apartment in Brooklyn by a landlady who, unaware that they were Jewish, promised them that she did not rent to Jews. Menuhin's mother protested that they were in fact Jewish and they didn't rent that apartment. But the violinist's mother carried that experience of anti-Semitism in her heart. And when her first son was born, she named him a name which means simply the Jew, turning that fact into a matter of pride. Yehudi Menuhin was a musical prodigy, and before he had reached his teens, was playing with symphony orchestras across the country. In those days, the comedian Bob Hope had a weekly radio show that was broadcast nationwide. One of the zaniest of his sidemen was an actor and comedian from Boston named Jerry Colonna. Apparently, the violin prodigy was to be a guest on Bob Hope's show, and Jerry Colonna decided to make his unusual name the theme of a running joke. Who's Yehudi? Became one of Colonna's most memorable lines, hinting at some hidden identity. How and when my mom and dad got together is documented in some photos in an old album. It was a house party in 1939. There's a photo of my dad leaning against a car between two women, my mother and Harriet, one of her best friends. I like to reflect that if Dad had been more attracted to Harriet, I would not be here. I don't know the details of how my parents came to adopt this running joke from the Bob Hope show into their most intimate term of affection for each other. And anyone I could ask has now passed on to the other side. But this joke, which we see today has more than a whiff of anti-Semitism, was one of the strands which held this young married couple together over 3 years of warfare separation. It is part of the series of events which led to the births of me and my siblings. Who's Yehudi? It sounds so inane today, but it was the foundation of a love to which I owe my very existence. And I imagine that each person hearing these words has stories like this. The love between two young people tossed about on the seas of wartime turns into a mother's love when the war is over. We're all mothers. We're all babies. Each of us is enwombed in the covenanted body that is this church. And each of us is the womb as well. Let us continue to nurture one another. Happy Mother's Day. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 23, Bring Many Names. May the light around us guide our footsteps and hold us fast to the best and most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams and give us rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of our world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we move. Amen. Blessed be.